Snow fell like torn pages from a forgotten diary, blank and endless. Each flake kissed the frozen ground before vanishing, leaving behind only silence and her. Lily walked barefoot through the white stretch of winter streets, her breath trembling in the air like smoke from a dying candle. Her feet were red, raw, bruised, yet she didn't stop. The world had taken enough from her already. The cold could have the rest. Somewhere behind her, city lights flickered like faraway hope, unreachable, but still there. Cars passed slowly, their headlights slicing the night into gold and silver streaks. None stopped. People glanced, pitied, then turned away, as if her pain were too heavy to look at. But she didn't cry. She hadn't in days. The tears had frozen long before the snow ever did. A gust of wind carried the faint hum of music from a cafe nearby. Laughter, warmth, everything she once had. She glanced through the fog glass for just a heartbeat, watching strangers sip cocoa, hands wrapped around comfort she couldn't afford. A small smile tugged at her cracked lips. Maybe that's what heaven feels like, she thought, a place where no one feels cold anymore. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. Her fingers trembled as she pulled her worn coat tighter. It barely reached her wrist now. She used to have gloves, a gift from her mother years ago, before illness took everything. The gloves were pawned for medicine that never worked, just like her dreams of becoming a nurse, frozen, unfinished, like footprints swallowed by snow. She turned the corner toward the old bridge that crossed River Gray. Beneath it, the city's forgotten ones huddled around small fires. She'd been one of them once, but tonight she didn't belong anywhere, not even among the lost. She wasn't looking for shelter. She was looking for something she couldn't name. At the other end of the bridge, a black car slowed to a stop. Its engine purred quietly, out of place amid the wind's cruel whispers. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out, dark coat, leather gloves, the kind of presence that didn't match the streets after midnight. His name was Ethan Ward, a billionaire known for his perfect suits, colder than his empire. But tonight, something drew his eyes to the fragile figure limping ahead, leaving blood where snow should be. He hesitated, his hand still on the car door. Maybe it was pity, or maybe something deeper, a strange ache he couldn't explain. He'd seen suffering on screens, in headlines, but never this close. Never like this. "Miss," he called out, voice breaking through the wind. She froze. For a second, she thought she imagined it. Then she toned, slowly, her hair catching stray flakes like tiny shards of glass. Their eyes met under a streetlight that hummed softly, the only witness to what was about to change both their lives. Ethan stepped closer, his shoes crunching over the snow. "Are you all right?" he asked. Lily gave a small, tired laugh. "Do I look all right?" Her voice was soft but sharp, the kind that had learned to survive silence. He removed his gloves without thinking. "You're bleeding," he said, looking down at her feet, red and swollen, half covered in frost. "You'll lose your toes if you stay out here." "I already lost more than that," she whispered. Something in her tone cracked him open. It wasn't drama. It was truth, raw, simple, unbearable. "Please," he said, almost pleading, "let me help." Her gaze flickered, suspicion, pride, exhaustion. She didn't trust kind voices anymore. They always came with conditions. "Why?" she asked. "Why would someone like you care?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Maybe he didn't need one. He took off his coat, ignoring the bite of the cold, and placed it gently over her shoulders, because no one else did. For the first time in days, Lily stopped shivering, not because of the warmth, but because someone had finally seen her. He motioned toward his car. "There's heat and food. I can take you somewhere safe." She looked back at the bridge, the only home she knew, then at him. "If you take me," she said softly, "don't ask me questions tonight. Just let me breathe." Ethan nodded. "All right." As she stepped toward the car, her footprints faded behind her, red dissolving into white. The snow kept falling, as if trying to cover her pain, but it couldn't. Inside the car, the warmth felt unreal. She flinched when the air vents blew against her frozen skin. Ethan watched her quietly from the driver's seat, her hands cupped around the heat like a prayer. She whispered, "It's been so long since I felt something warm." He didn't respond. Instead, he turned the heater higher, pretending not to notice the way his throat tightened. Outside, the city lights blurred into streaks as they drove. Somewhere deep inside, Ethan knew this wasn't just a rescue. It was a beginning neither of them expected. The snow had finally met its match, a wounded soul refusing to disappear. The hum of the car filled the silence between them. Streetlights flickered past the windows like passing ghosts, each one revealing a little more of her face, pale, fragile, yet carved with strength that shouldn't have survived this long. Ethan drove slowly, not wanting to startle her, not knowing what to say. Every few seconds, he glanced away, wondering how someone so young had eyes that looked so tired. Lily kept her gaze on the window. Her breath made small clouds on the glass, fading just as fast as they formed. "You shouldn't have stopped," she said quietly. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I couldn't just drive past." "People do it all the time," she replied, voice hollow. "You get used to it." That sentence sat between them like a confession. Ethan exhaled softly, realizing how far removed he'd been from the kind of pain that expected nothing, not even help. When they reached the edge of downtown, he pulled over near a small diner still glowing with neon light. The sign buzzed, "Open all night." The air outside bit at their skin as they stepped out. But inside the diner, the smell of coffee and fried eggs wrapped around them like a blanket. A waitress glanced up, then down again. Maybe she noticed Lily's bare feet. Maybe she just didn't want to. "Sit," Ethan said gently, guiding her to a booth. She hesitated, then sank into the seat, her body trembling from the sudden change in temperature. He handed her the menu. "Order whatever you want." She laughed softly, not mockery, just disbelief. "You think I've looked at a menu in months?" He smiled faintly. "Then let me choose for you." Minutes later, the waitress returned with 2 steaming plates, pancakes and hot chocolate with extra cream. Lily's hands shook as she wrapped them around the mug. The first sip hit her tongue, and she let out a sound halfway between a sigh and a sob. Ethan looked down, pretending to stir his coffee. He didn't want to make her feel watched, but he couldn't look away either. There was something sacred about that moment, a starving person tasting comfort for the first time in forever. She whispered, "It's too sweet." "You don't like sweet things." "I do," she said, eyes glistening. "I just forgot how they taste." He didn't reply. Some pains didn't need answers, only silence deep enough to hold them. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. When she finished eating, Lily leaned back, her exhaustion catching up to her. "You're not going to ask me where I came from." Ethan shook his head. "Not tonight." She nodded slowly, relief flickering across her face. "Thank you. Everyone wants to fix you before they even know your name." He smiled softly. "Then start there. What's your name?" "Lily," she said. "Just Lily. No last name that matters in them all." Ethan hesitated. "Lily suits you. Something fragile that still blooms in the cold." She looked away, but a faint smile crept in. "You talk like someone who's never had to survive winter." He chuckled, the sound unfamiliar in his own throat. "You'd be surprised. My winters just look different." Lily's eyes met his again, curious now, less afraid. "You lost someone too." He paused. "My wife," he said quietly. 3 years ago. Car accident." The air thickened. The diner's soft hum turned into distant noise, fading behind the weight of his words. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, eyes down. "I am too. I built everything to distract myself. Business, money, noise. But it never got quiet." Lily reached across the table, hesitated, then touched his hand. Her fingers were small, trembling. "You found quiet tonight," she said. "Maybe that's something." Ethan's eyes lifted, locking onto Hayes. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. Just 2 broken people sharing borrowed warmth. When the clock above the counter struck midnight, the waitress refilled their cups. Lily yawned softly. "You should rest," Ethan said. I can take you to a hotel. Her expression darkened. I can't sleep in strange rooms. He frowned slightly. Then where do you feel safe? She looked down at her hands. Nowhere. But I guess being near someone who doesn't want anything feels close enough. He nodded. Then we'll just drive for a while. They stepped back into the night. Snow had thickened, blanketing everything in white silence. Ethan walked beside her this time, not ahead, not behind. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a ghost in a living world. And as the wind howled across empty streets, she realized something terrifying. Warmth hurt more than the cold, because it reminded her of everything she'd lost. But maybe, just maybe, it could also remind her of what she could still find. They drove through streets now half buried under white. The storm had thickened into a curtain, hiding everything except the faint glow of lamps ahead. Lily sat quietly, her head resting against the window. The rhythm of the tires over snow made her eyelids heavy, but she didn't let herself fall asleep. Sleep meant dreams, and dreams were dangerous. They reminded her of warmth that never lasted. Ethan watched her reflection in the glass. There was something haunting about the way she stared into the dark, as if expecting it to stare back. The city thinned into the quiet outskirts where houses slept beneath blankets of snow. Eventually, he pulled into a narrow lane and stopped in front of a small cabin, his late wife's old retreat, the one he hadn't visited since she was gone. It's warm inside, he said softly. No one else knows about this place. Lily didn't move right away. She looked at him, cautious. Why are you helping me? He sighed, leaning back. Maybe because someone once saved me, too. Her brow furrowed. Someone? He nodded. A stranger, after the accident. I was in the hospital for months. Lost, broken. They didn't know me, but they stayed every night until I could walk again. Then they disappeared. I never even learned their name. Lily's eyes softened, the frost inside her melting just a little. And now you're paying it forward. He gave a small, sad smile. Maybe I'm just trying to feel human again. They stepped out of the car, crunching through untouched snow toward the door. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and dust, untouched for years. Ethan flipped on the light, revealing a modest living room with an old fireplace and faded photos on the walls. Lily lingered near the entrance, hesitant to step further. Are you sure it's okay? I don't want to. You're not intruding, he interrupted gently. You're safe here. She nodded and stepped inside. The warmth from the fire spread slowly, and she watched it dance across the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't cold. But comfort, she realized, could be frightening too. It exposed the cracks you'd learned to hide. Ethan returned with a first aid kit and a towel. May I? He asked, nodding toward her feet. Lily hesitated, then sat on the couch, her legs trembling slightly. He knelt down, his movements careful, reverent almost. When he peeled off the frozen fabric and touched her skin, she flinched, not from pain, but from the shock of gentleness. Her heels were bruised, soles blistered and raw. Ethan worked silently, cleaning each cut with a softness she hadn't felt in years. The fire crackled behind them, filling the silence with warmth that words couldn't match. Lily blinked back tears. You don't have to do this. I know, he replied, but I want to. She looked at him, really looked, and saw a man haunted by his own ghosts. It wasn't pity she felt, but recognition. Two souls stitched by pain, meeting in the same broken world. When he finished, he wrapped her feet in soft bandages and handed her a blanket. Try to sleep, he said. She nodded but stayed quiet, her gaze lingering on him as he sat by the window, staring into the snow. The storm outside whispered against the glass, soft and relentless. Do you ever feel like life stops noticing you? She asked suddenly. Ethan turned toward her, startled. Like you could disappear, she continued, and the world wouldn't even blink. He swallowed hard. Every day, after she died. Her eyes met his. Then maybe we both survived something we weren't supposed to. The fire popped, sending a small shower of sparks into the air. Neither spoke after that. But in the quiet, something fragile began to form. Not love, not yet, but understanding. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Right, yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Hours passed. The snow softened outside. The storm finally tired of itself. Lily drifted between wakefulness and dreams. In her half-sleep, she saw flashes, her old apartment, her mother's laughter, the eviction notice, the night she left everything behind. Ethan watched her from the chair, the firelight painting gold across her sleeping face. She looked peaceful now, almost weightless. For the first time since his wife's death, he didn't feel alone. He whispered, "You deserve better than the world gave you, Lily." She stirred slightly, murmuring something he couldn't catch. Outside, dawn began to bloom behind the clouds, pale pink brushing against the snow. Inside, warmth finally won its long war against the cold. And though neither knew it yet, this night, the night she walked barefoot into his life, was only the beginning of the story that would heal them both. Morning crept in softly, touching the frost-covered windows with pale light. The world outside still slept under its white silence. Inside the cabin, the fire had turned to glowing embers, and Lily woke to the smell of coffee drifting through the air. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. The warmth, the quiet, the absence of fear. It didn't fit the life she knew anymore. Ethan stood by the stove, sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee into 2 chip mugs. When he noticed her stirring, he smiled faintly. "Good morning." Lily blinked, voice rasping from sleep. "I didn't mean to stay." He set the mug in front of her. "You needed rest. That's all that matters." She looked at the steam rising from the cup, hesitant to touch it. "You keep giving me things I don't deserve." Ethan's tone softened. "Maybe you just forgot what you do." She held the cup between both hands, letting the heat soak into her skin. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was something gentler, like a pause between 2 breaths. After a while, Ethan spoke again. "Do you have anyone you can go back to? Family? Friends?" Lily's smile faltered. "My mother passed. Father left when I was 9. And friends," she gave a small shrug. "People disappear when you start breaking." He nodded slowly, understanding more than he wished to. "Sometimes it's not the leaving that hurts," he said quietly. "It's realizing they were never really there." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with a sudden rush of recognition. "That's exactly it." He smiled faintly. "Guess pain speaks the same language everywhere." They spent the morning repairing small things. The firewood stack, a creaky chair, the silence that used to weigh too heavy. Lily hummed softly as she folded an old blanket, and Ethan found himself memorizing the sound. It had been years since laughter or melody filled this space. At one point, she caught him watching her and said, "You're staring." He chuckled. "It's strange, seeing this place alive again." Lily smiled shyly. Maybe it was just waiting for someone to return. He paused. Maybe it was waiting for both of us. Her cheeks flushed, and she turned back to the fire. Something unspoken moved in the air, not romance, but something older, deeper, like trust being reborn. Later, as snow melted from the roof, Lily found a framed photo on the mantel. A woman with kind eyes and sunlight in her smile, Ethan's wife. She hesitated, then whispered, "She's beautiful." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. She was. "She looks gentle." "She was that too," he said. "Too gentle for this world." Lily placed the frame back carefully. "I'm sorry." He gave a quiet nod. "So am I." For a while, they just stood there, 2 strangers bound by loss. Then Lily asked, "Do you ever stop blaming yourself?" Ethan looked at her, startled. "You sound like someone who knows." She sat down on the couch, voice trembling. "I do. My mom got sick. I took her to every hospital I could, but none would help without money. I kept telling her I'd find a way, but I didn't. I sold everything, even my shoes. She died 2 nights later." Her words cracked open, something raw in the room. Ethan crossed to her, kneeling just as he had the night before. "You did what you could," he said. "You didn't fail her." Lily shook her head, tears slipping free. "It doesn't feel that way." "Maybe because love always blames itself," he whispered. She looked up at him then, and for a fleeting second, she saw her mother's gentleness reflected in his eyes. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. They sat in silence, the fire whispering between them. Lily wiped her cheeks, laughing softly through tears. You're too kind for a billionaire. Ethan smiled, a little embarrassed. Maybe that's what makes me terrible at being one. She tilted her head. Or maybe it makes you the only kind that matters. Her words lingered long after she spoke them. He turned toward the window where sunlight broke through the gray, scattering diamonds across the snow. It was quiet, not empty, not lonely, just still. And in that stillness, something began to shift. Ethan realized he didn't want to go back to the life he'd built, the endless meetings, the hollow dinners, the mansion full of silence. Hey, in this forgotten cabin, a barefoot stranger had reminded him how to feel. And Lily, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, felt something too, the faint, unfamiliar warmth of being seen not as broken, but as whole. Outside, the world thawed, unaware that somewhere in its quiet corner, two souls had just begun to remember what it meant to live. The sun had barely risen above the pines when Lily stepped outside. The world glittered beneath the morning light, snowflakes glowing like tiny shards of glass. Her breath came out in soft clouds as she wrapped Ethan's coat tighter around her shoulders. The air was cold, but her heart wasn't. For the first time in years, she didn't dread waking up. From inside, Ethan watched her through the window, a quiet smile forming. There was something about the way she stood, fragile yet unbroken, that stirred something deep in him. He didn't recognize the feeling at first, but it was there, the fragile spark of hope. When she came back in, brushing the frost from her hair, Ethan handed her a plate of toast and jam. You know, he said gently, you look less like a ghost today. She laughed, a real laugh this time. And you look less like someone hiding from the world. He tilted his head. Touché. They ate in comfortable silence. Every small act, a shared breakfast, a glance, a smile, stitched something invisible between them. After breakfast, Ethan took out a small wooden box from a cabinet. These were Hayes, he said, opening it to reveal a pair of wool-lined slippers. She used to wear them, Hay. Lily blinked. Your wife's. He nodded. They'd just been waiting for a reason to be used again. Her eyes filled instantly. I can't wear those. Why not? Because they are sacred to you. He smiled faintly. So is kindness, Lily, and she believed in that more than anything. She hesitated, then slowly slipped them on. The warmth that rushed through her feet wasn't just physical. It was memory, love, and grief all braided together. They fit, she whispered. Ethan looked down, his voice soft. Maybe they were always meant to. For a while, neither spoke. The fire crackled, wind murmured outside, and the cabin filled with something that felt dangerously close to peace. But peace is a way of testing itself. That afternoon, Lily went outside to fetch more firewood. The snow had thickened again, and her body, still weak, fought the cold. Ethan found her minutes later, kneeling by the logs, hands trembling. Lily, he called, rushing toward her. You shouldn't be out here. She looked up, cheeks pale. I wanted to help. You've done enough. He took the logs from her, shaking his head. Helping doesn't mean freezing. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You sound like her again. He stopped. Huh? Your wife, she said softly. I've seen how you look when you talk about her. You loved her deeply. Ethan nodded. Still do. And yet, she whispered, you're still capable of caring again. That's rare. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't just another wounded soul. She was his mirror, his reminder that grief doesn't always mean ending. Sometimes it's an invitation to begin differently. When they returned inside, Ethan made her sit near the fire, wrapping another blanket around her shoulders. You're shaking, he murmured. I'll be fine. He poured her tea. You keep saying that like it's a promise to someone else. She smiled weakly. Maybe it is. He sat beside her. Then whoever that is, they'd want you to keep it. Lily looked at him, eyes glistening. I think she would have liked you, she said suddenly. Your wife. Ethan's chest tightened. And I think my wife would have wanted me to meet someone like you, someone who still believed the world can be kind, even after it wasn't. She exhaled shakily. I want to believe that again. Then start here, he whispered. Start now. Their eyes met, and something fragile but real flickered in the air. Not love yet, but healing. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. As the day faded into night, Ethan stepped outside to gather his thoughts. The air was biting, but his chest felt warm. Through the window, he saw Lily asleep on the couch, the slippers still on her feet, the faintest smile on her lips. He whispered into the wind, as if speaking to his late wife. You see her, don't you? You'd tell me I'm doing the right thing. The snow fell quietly in reply. Back inside, Lily stowed, murmuring in her sleep, fragments of words Ethan couldn't catch, except one. Home. He stood there for a long time, the firelight flickering over both their faces, realizing that maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was a person who finally made the silence feel safe. That night, the wind grew restless again. It howled through the cracks of the old cabin, rattling the windows like it was trying to wake the ghost sleeping inside. Ethan stirred from his chair, tossing another log into the fire, but his mind was far from sleep. Across the room, Lily lay beneath the blanket, her breathing soft, fragile, the rhythm of someone who hadn't felt safe enough to rest in a long time. He leaned his head back, closing his eyes. The crackle of fire mixed with the memories he wished would fade. His wife's laughter, the hospital monitor's beeps, the smell of rain the day she was buried. It was strange, he thought, how grief didn't always scream. Sometimes it whispered in the quietest moments. Outside, the snow thickened, erasing the world. Ethan rose and checked the window. The storm was fierce now. He hesitated, then grabbed an extra blanket and tucked it around Lily. Her eyes fluttered open for a second. Still snowing, she mumbled. He nodded, like it's never going to stop. She smiled faintly. Then maybe we're meant to stay a little longer. He didn't argue. As dawn approached, the storm only worsened. The roads would be blocked for days, maybe more. Ethan made breakfast while Lily hummed softly, her voice filling the cabin like warmth itself. Between bites, they spoke about small things, the taste of pancakes, favorite seasons, dreams that used to exist before life grew heavy. Then Ethan asked quietly, "What will you do when the snow clears?" Lily's expression shifted. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't have anywhere to go back to." He paused, then said, "You could stay? For a while, at least." She looked at him, eyes wide, searching for hidden motives, finding none. "Why?" "Because maybe helping you helps me, too." Lily's lips parted, but no words came. Gratitude was too small a word for what she felt. The day passed in quiet comfort, but as night fell again, something inside her began to stir, a memory she'd buried deep. The sound of the storm outside echoed another night years ago, one filled with ambulance lights and unanswered prayers. She trembled, clutching the blanket tighter. Ethan noticed immediately. "Hey," he said softly, sitting beside her. "You're shaking. What's wrong?" She tried to smile, but her voice broke. "The storm, it sounds like that night." "What night?" "The night my mom died," she whispered. "It was snowing then, too. I was holding her hand, but she kept getting colder. I kept thinking if I just stayed awake, she wouldn't leave. But she did." Her words shattered into sobs. Ethan reached out instinctively, pulling her close. She resisted at first, then let herself fall into his embrace, not as a woman seeking love, but as a soul desperate for shelter. "It's okay," he murmured. "You don't have to be strong right now." She buried her face against his chest, the warmth of his heartbeat grounding her. "I keep seeing her," she whispered, "every time I close my eyes." Ethan tightened his hold. "Then see her here, with you, not gone. She'd want that, wouldn't she?" Lily nodded slowly, tears wetting his shirt. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red but lighter. "You know," she said, voice trembling, "sometimes I think people don't really die. They just move into the hearts that still remember them." Ethan smiled through the ache in his chest. Then she's still alive, right here. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. The storm quieted sometime past midnight. The cabin glowed in the soft pulse of the dying fire. Ethan and Lily sat in silence, both lost in their own ghosts. Finally, Lily whispered, "You saved me, Ethan." He shook his head. "No, you just needed someone to remind you you're still here." She reached for his hand, fingers trembling but steadying as they touched. Maybe we both needed that. He didn't pull away. Outside, the snow began to ease, and the first stars appeared, tiny flickers of light in an endless dark. For the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel haunted by his past. He felt forgiven, not by the world, but by himself. And somewhere in that fragile, sacred silence, something unspoken began to bloom. Not romance, not yet, but redemption, soft and real as a dawn waiting to rise. By morning, the storm had finally surrendered. Sunlight spilled through the window, kissing the snow outside until it glowed like a sea of diamonds. The silence felt different now, not heavy, not hollow, but sacred, like the world was holding its breath. Lily stood by the window, her fingers tracing invisible shapes in the fog on the glass. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "almost too beautiful to belong to this world." Ethan joined her, standing close enough to see her reflection beside his. "Beauty always belonged to this world," he said quietly. "We just forget to look for it." She turned to face him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe you're finally remembering too." He nodded. "Maybe I am." They stepped outside, boots crunching over the snow. The air was crisp, clean, and full of possibility. Lily tilted her face to the sun, her eyes closing as warmth kissed her skin. For a long time, Ethan simply watched her, the way light softened her expression, the way peace finally looked at home on her face. When she opened her eyes again, she said softly, "You know what's strange? For years I thought the world was cruel. But maybe it was just waiting for me to see this." He smiled. "Maybe it was waiting for you to survive long enough to find it." They walked to the edge of the woods, where the snow melted into a small stream. Lily knelt beside it, her reflection shimmering in the water. She slipped off one slipper and dipped her foot gently into the icy flow. "It doesn't hurt anymore," she said. "Not like before." Ethan crouched beside her. "That's how healing feels. Cold at first, but it wakes you up." She looked at him, eyes full of quiet wonder. "Do you think we get to start over? People like us?" He thought for a long moment. "Not over," he said, "but forward." Lily nodded slowly. "Forward sounds nice." They lingered there for a while, the stream whispering stories only the earth could hear. When they finally turned back toward the cabin, Lily's steps were steady, her shoulders no longer bent under invisible weight. Inside, Ethan poured 2 cups of coffee. The steam rose between them like unspoken words. "Lily," he said finally, "I want to help you rebuild. Find a place, maybe even study again. You mentioned once you wanted to be a nurse." Her eyes widened. "You remembered?" "Of course," he said, smiling softly. "You wanted to help people. I can make that happen." She stared at him for a long moment, the light of the fire reflecting in her eyes. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan." "I know," he said, "but maybe this isn't about owing. Maybe it's about giving life another chance to make sense." Her voice trembled. "What if I fail again?" He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Then you fail forward. That's what living is." She exhaled shakily, then smiled through tears. "You sound like someone who's finally forgiven himself." He paused, realizing the truth in her words. "Maybe because someone finally showed me how." If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Later that evening, as the fire dimmed, Lily pulled out a small, worn photo from her pocket. Her mother, smiling, standing by a field of sunflowers. She placed it on the mantel beside Ethan's photo of his wife. 2 women, gone but never forgotten, watching over the 2 souls they'd somehow led to each other. Ethan stood beside her. "She's beautiful," he said, She'd have liked you, Lily whispered. You remind me of what she used to say, that good people never disappear. They just find new hearts to live in. He smiled, his throat tight. Then maybe she's the reason we met. Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining in the glow. Then maybe we were both being saved all along. Outside, twilight painted the snow in gold and lavender. Inside, time seemed to stand still. The silence that once felt empty now hummed with meaning. And for the first time since their pain began, both of them believed in second chances, in kindness, in the quiet magic of being seen. Morning came gently, not with a shout but a whisper. The sun brushed gold across the window pane, spilling light into the room like a quiet promise. Lily woke to the smell of coffee again, a scent that now meant safety instead of survival. Ethan was already by the window, lost in thought, holding 2 mugs. When she joined him, he handed her one without a word. Outside, the snow was melting. Small streams wound through the white fields like veins returning life to frozen earth. She smiled faintly. It's strange, she said softly. A few days ago, I didn't think I'd live to see another sunrise. Ethan turned to her, his voice low and steady. And now you're here, watching one. She nodded, eyes glistening. Do you ever think the world gives us signs? That maybe we meet people when we're meant to? I used to believe everything was coincidence, he admitted. Now I'm not so sure. Some people walk into your life and remind you that you were never meant to give up. Lily sipped her coffee, warmth tracing its way through her body. You think that's what I did for you? He smiled. I think that's what we did for each other. They stood together in quiet understanding. No need for big words. Silence said everything. As the days stretched on, they packed what little Lily owned, a few memories folded into a small bag. Ethan insisted on driving her into town. She protested half-heartedly but finally agreed. The road was clearer now, the snow pushed aside by morning sun. The world looked new, almost forgiving. When they reached the bus station, she hesitated at the door, gripping her bag tightly. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't, Ethan said gently. Just live. Do what you were meant to do. Her eyes shimmered. I'll send you a letter. When I start nursing school. He smiled. I'll be waiting for it. Lily took a deep breath, then hugged him. It wasn't rushed. It was long, silent, heavy with everything words could never hold. Thank you, she murmured against his chest, for seeing me when no one else did. He held her a moment longer before whispering, You made me see myself again, Lily. That's worth everything. When she stepped onto the bus, Ethan stood there, watching her silhouette in the frosted window. The engine roared to life, snow swirling around the tires. She pressed her palm to the glass. He raised his in return. No words, just 2 souls saying goodbye in the language of the heart. The bus disappeared down the road, a trail of tire marks cutting through the thawing snow. Ethan stood there until it vanished completely, the world quiet once more. But it wasn't empty this time. He turned back toward the car, his breath fogging in the cold, and noticed something at his feet, a faint trail of footprints in the melting snow. Hers, barefoot once, now covered in the memory of warmth. He smiled to himself. Walk free, Lily, he whispered. The world's waiting for your kindness. Back at the cabin, he placed a new photo on the mantel beside the others, Lily's slippers resting by the fire. A symbol, not of loss, but of love reborn in the simplest form, care. As the flames danced, Ethan sat down, closing his eyes. The silence wasn't loneliness anymore. It was peace. Somewhere out there, a girl who once walked barefoot through pain was learning to walk toward purpose. And a man who once thought his heart had died had learned to feel again. The snow outside shimmered as the wind carried whispers through the trees, echoes of 2 broken souls who had found healing in each other's warmth. And though their paths had parted, one truth would always remain. Compassion, once lit, never goes dark. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be a way of saying, I felt you. The fire burned low, painting gold across the old wooden floor. Ethan leaned back, eyes half closed, a faint smile on his lips. Somewhere out there, Lily was walking, not barefoot anymore, Not broken, just walking forward. And the world, softened by her steps, felt a little warmer because of it.